What's going on? Welcome to Fantasy Smack Talk. This is your Week 7 waiver wire. Before we get into it though, DraftKings, if you haven't signed up yet, you got about a week to where you can still get your free Smack Talk shirt. Sign up using the promo code FST. Follow the link in the card or in the description. Sign up, deposit at least $5 during the month of October. DraftKings will give you an entry into a free cash game, and we'll give you a t-shirt. It's a win-win. Kind of a quiet week on the waiver wire, but there's obviously still plenty to talk about. But I wanted to give you one quick tip before we get into it, though. I'm someone that likes to stream defenses, and one thing that I really like to do is, I fill my team with a lot of upside and just a lot of guys that are gambles. And after the 4 o'clock games, there's normally a guy that I could cut loose. And when I am streaming defenses, I like to stay ahead of everyone else and not have to rely on using any type of waiver number to pick up a defense. But if you look at the defenses that are available before the Sunday night game starts, during the bye weeks, you can have your pick from around 10 teams sometimes, depending on how many teams are on a bye, to pick up your defense. For example, because if the game hasn't started or they're on a bye, you can still pick them up and drop anyone on your bench. I was able to get St. Louis's defense in 4 out of my 6 leagues after the 4 o'clock games this week. Because they had a bye this week, people dropped them, and they were sitting there, and I was able to pick them up. So that's just a little thing that can give you an advantage, especially if you're streaming defenses. But let's talk about running backs that are must-adds in all leagues. James Starks. That situation is turning into an absolute mess. Packers are on a bye week 7. So we'll see what happens if Lacy comes back and is fully healthy. But at this point, I think all Lacy owners need to try to get Starks on their bench just for some security. I do think Lacy will come back and have a crack at getting the majority of the carries back, but he hasn't looked good. He's not himself. Christine Michael's the next guy out there with Dallas. It looks like there is a legit chance he could take over that backfield. This is kind of crazy. And here's the thing: is he's a freak. He is a freak of nature athlete. But what they said in Seattle is he battled inconsistencies, whatever that means, whether it's picking up blocks or whatnot. But I think Dallas is willing to look past that or work with him and try to get him past that hurdle, because it legitimately looks like he could be taking over and being in at least maybe a 50-50 split with Randall. So let's talk about receivers. Not really anyone I think is a must-add in all leagues, but a couple guys. Rashard Matthews, only on 50% of leagues still. I get it. They got the rookie Parker out there. The Dolphins' offense looks terrible. They look like a brand new team coming off the bye. And Matthews is just legit locked in as the number 2. Yes, Parker will be maybe nipping at his heels later in the season, but Matthews has proven that he can be solid, and I think he definitely has wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 potential for the rest of the way. Marvin Jones is another guy. He's only on in about 40% of leagues right now. A little bit of inconsistencies, but he's been solid as of late. Bengals offense just looks 100% legit. They are just firing on all cylinders. They're looking great. Marvin Jones, I think he can flirt with double-digit touchdowns this year, so I think he needs to be right on the cusp of being added in deeper leagues or in all leagues. Green Beckham's a guy that I think should be added in deeper leagues. The Tennessee rookie receiver. Here's another guy that's kind of a freak of nature. He looks like a tight end running around out there on the field. Nightmare for a lot of cornerbacks. He's just a really, really big guy. And so obviously I like him more in standard leagues than PPR. I think he will be a red zone threat for Tennessee. So just a guy to add to your bench that has an upside. I think he could have decent value as the season goes on. But if you want to be the one to take the gamble on him, you're going to need to pick him up soon, because someone else is gonna snag him. Stephon Diggs, I want to talk about real quick, wide receiver from Minnesota. I think Charles Johnson is in real danger of losing his job. Diggs has looked good. He's produced. They're targeting him a lot. I think there's a legit chance that he ends up getting that job. Now, even if he does win the starting job, I don't know if he's quite a must-add in all leagues, but it's really close. He's a guy, again, right on the cusp of kind of wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 potential if he ends up winning that job. So he's definitely someone to take a look at. Quarterbacks, I got 2 must-adds in all leagues for you. First one's owned in 75% of leagues, and that's Ryan Tannehill. Again, they looked like a completely new team after the bye. They got their new head coach. I just think, I like Tannehill as a top 10 quarterback coming in, and he's actually been pretty close to that so far, even though it doesn't seem like it. a lot of his yards where he was getting were in junk yards. I mean, they weren't playing well, but he was still putting up some decent fantasy stats. But I still think he's a top 10 quarterback from here on out. I think he is a must-add in all leagues. And then Blake Bortles, you got to give this guy more respect. Only on 45% of leagues. This guy, so far this season, has been a top 10 quarterback. And he has weapons. Their defense isn't all that great, so they need him to pass a lot. I really like Blake Bortles, and I even hate to say it, but if you're one of the teams that has Peyton Manning or Matthew Stafford, I mean, yes, he just had a monster game, but I mean, any of those quarterbacks that have been underperforming or have just been a little bit inconsistent, I think at least add Bortles for some security so that you can play the matchup game from week to week because he is legit. He is the real deal. A couple of tight ends for you. There's a lot of decent tight ends on a bye this week, so you might be looking for a tight end. Benjamin Watson. He hadn't had a really good game until week 6, but he had been consistently involved. So I don't necessarily think it's a fluke. I don't think he will be that involved every week, obviously, but I do think he could be legitimately entering the discussion for a tight end 1, but not quite. But I do still think he's worth an add in deeper leagues. And then Austin Seferian-Jenkins for Tampa Bay. Off to a great start, then he got hurt, but everything's looking like he's going to come back week 7. So I think he's, kind of right there as well, right maybe between like 8 and 15 in terms of where I would rank him in tight end land. And I do think he would be a great fill-in for you if you need help this week. Defenses, I already talked about St. Louis a little bit. They were dropped in a lot of leagues because they were on a bye. But I'm not even calling them a pick-up and play. I think they're a must-add in all leagues. And here's why. Their next 4 games, they play at home against Cleveland, at home against San Francisco, then at Minnesota, then at home against Chicago. I think you're starting them all 4 of those weeks. And when you look at the rest of their schedule, I think you're starting them all but 3 weeks from here on out. So if you're someone that's been streaming defenses, pick up St. Louis. I would even use a decent waiver number on them if they're available because I think they are going to be a top 10 defense pretty much from here on out. And then one pick up and play for you. I got Kansas City at home against the Steelers. The Steelers without Big Ben are not that good of an offense. We'll see what the Vic injury has, but it does look like Landry Jones is probably going to get the start, and I like that in terms of Kansas City being at home. They're going to try to get to that quarterback and force some turnovers. This is just a portion of the list. See the full list. Get on the website. Brent and I will be back later in the week, and if you got questions, go to our forums, post them in there. We have an army of experts in there all week. We answer hundreds and hundreds of questions. We try to get to as many as we can. Brent and I are in there. So get in the forums if you got questions. Good luck on the waiver wire.